bring the microphone a little bit out right here. Right here. So you ready?
25 partnered with other organizations
Hey,
to
John,
invest more than
can we
$6
get the
million,
radio off?
empowering people to rebuild 25 blocks and renew their neighborhoods. Matthew 25.
Just a second for the sound man.
Connected.
The volunteer sound man.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming tonight. Rob Hogue State Center here. Let's hear it for the sound man, John Hernandez. This is democracy in action. This is how it works. So it is my great honor to be able to introduce our guest speaker tonight, all the way from Washington State, Governor Jay Enslee. Thank you, Governor Enslee, for being here. And I just want to share a couple things about his background that I think will be very important for Iowans. First of all, like yours truly, he actually wrote a book on climate change in 2008 called Apollo's Fire, which I believe is available through the Cedar Rapids Metro Public Library System, and I encourage you all to get a chance to read it. It's a very good book. And then second, one of the things that's been very interesting to me about Governor Enslee and his campaign for president is not only is he the first candidate that I know of in American history to say that climate change is his top priority and a focus on that issue as the reason for his candidacy. He is also somebody who has a proven record of getting results in the state of Washington on a whole range of progressive issues. And he is also somebody who can compete and win in diverse areas. He got his political start in the Yakima Valley of Washington State, which is a farm community very similar to parts of Iowa. And I think it's really important for Iowans across our state to get to know our candidates, and we're very excited to have you here tonight, Governor Enslee. I want to just say one other thing. I really appreciate the turnout tonight for the first and what I hope will be a series of events addressing climate change by our candidates, because it is a priority issue, and there are some things that we Iowans need to make sure our candidates for president know. And this is, by the way, you know why we're first in the nation with the caucuses? Because we do it best. Yeah. We do it best. We Iowans take this process very, very seriously. We give all the candidates their chance to have their say. We test them out. We check them out. We get to know them at a personal level so that we can nominate the best candidates, the best candidate possible. And I really want Iowans to speak up with our presidential candidates about climate change and do the education to make sure that our candidates know that this is a big and urgent issue, to make sure they know it's about clean energy, like Governor Enslee addresses in his book Apollo's Fire, but it's much broader than that. And as we sit here in front of the Cedar River, all of us who live here know the devastation that we had from that river in 2008, and more recently in 2016. But 2008 was a mammoth flood. 5,000 homes evacuated, 1,000 businesses, churches, other nonprofits, 25,000 people evacuated, and $5 billion of damage in a city of 125,000 or $40,000 of damage per resident. So that was a big deal. I want Iowans to tell our candidates that we need a president who will bring Americans together to act on climate today and to sustain that action for decades, because this problem's not going away. And critically, we need a president who will help lead the world instead of being a stick in the mud like the current occupant of the White House, who will help lead the world to deal with this issue. So with that, I present to you Washington State Governor Jay Enslee.
How about a round of applause for the guy next to Al Gore who's done most for climate change in the United States, Rob Hogue, right here. Sure.
Okay, I really apologize for this, folks. I forgot to introduce some people who I promised to introduce. And I want to introduce because I want you to know they're there. First of all, one of my state representatives, Art Stade. Art, where are you? Second, Lynn County's newest Democratic State Representative, Molly Donahue. All the way from Dubuque, State Representative Chuck Eisenhart. Chuck, stand up and be recognized. And the biggest winner of 2019, our newest state senator, all the way from Cedar Falls, State Senator Eric Gittens, who won the special election. I also want to let people know there are a lot of our local leaders here from climate action groups and environmental groups, and I'm going to ask them to stand and be recognized. And I know I may not get everybody, but I want people to get connected with the people locally who are working on this issue every day so that you know who to get involved. So please stand up as I say your name. Phil Engen with Citizens Climate Lobby. Thank you, Phil. Sherry Albrecht from the Sierra Club. Stand up, Sherry. Joe Wilkinson from the Iowa Wildlife Federation. Joe Wilkinson. Where did Joe go? Well, there he is, back there. Joe's back there. Billy Wilson from Biofuels Vision 2020. Thank you, Billy. Cheryl Valenta from Iowa 350. Cheryl, where are you? And Jason Snell and Scott Rowland with Sunrise Movement, co-sponsor for tonight's event. Thank you, Jason. And with that, let me try this again. With that, let me give to you the great governor of the state of Washington, Jay Enslee.
Listen, I am so appreciative of this incredible turnout today. I have to tell you, I feel a little kinship with you already for a couple reasons. Rob said the reason I was first because you do it best. You also share, I think, a belief with me that anything that starts with the letter I is best in the United States of America as well. I feel a kinship because underneath this portico here today, it's just this evening reminds me of when I had my 3 kids in Yakima, Washington. Trudy and I raised 3 kids in the sagebrush and apple growing areas of eastern Washington. We'd come down next to the Yakima River, the Yakima Park. And it just reminds me of a moment in my life where I grew up raising 3 kids. And I now have 3 grandchildren who have been officially declared the cutest grandkids in the state of Washington by the governor. And I made a decision a few months ago about those grandchildren. I was down walking with my grandkid Brody, who's now 10, watching him down on the beaches of Puget Sound rolling over rocks. And I saw his little face light up when you see a little worm or a crab or a clam. You know how you get excited when you're a kid and you see a little life form. And I was reminded when I was his age, my dad was a biology teacher. And he'd take me down to Carkeek Park. And I remember the joy of seeing nature when I was 10 years of age. And I was thinking about those 3 kids, grandkids of mine, and I realized they are not going to have what I had when I grew up, which are crabs and salmon and snow in the mountains, and forests that haven't been burnt down, and clean air and clean water in Puget Sound that wasn't acidified beyond all imagination. They were not going to have that unless people of my generation stood up and did something about climate change. And I made a decision that was very personal. And it was this. I got a great gig. I'm governor of the state of Washington, very successful. I'll tell you about some of those successes later. But I made a decision that on my last few days on earth, and I hope that's not for a long time, that I would be able to look at my 3 grandkids in the eye and tell them that I've done everything humanly possible in my life to defeat climate change and give them a chance. And it was pretty clear to me what that would be, which is to run for President of the United States. Because we know that we are the first generation in human history, now with carbon dioxide levels just the last week announced as the highest levels in human histories of millions of years, that we are the first generation to feel the sting of climate change, and we are the last generation to be able to do something about it. The next President of the United States is either going to act to mobilize the industry and the intellectual capability and the technological genius and the skilled workforce of the United States, or it will be too late. And that is a strong statement, but it is a scientifically accurate statement. So I'm here tonight to pledge to you that if I'm given this high honor, I will make sure that defeating climate change is the #1 priority of the United States of America in my administration. I'm pledging that to you. And I think that's an important statement to make, and so far I'm the only candidate who's made that statement. It is not an easy statement to make, because we have many things that we care about and that we've worked on. And I've had a lot of success on those things. I'm proud to have given educators the highest pay raise in America this year, something I believe very strongly about. I'm proud to stand before you as the governor with the highest minimum wage and the best paid family leave in the United States. And we shortly are going to be adopting the strongest overtime rules, so we can get overtime rules where 25% of people can start getting a pay increase again that's overdue. I'm proud about that. I'm proud that you know, we're kind of radical in Washington. We believe women should make the same as men for the same job. I believe that. So we have embraced the best gender pay equity laws in the United States. I'm proud that we have acted with new ways to educate our kids. Now, I think we've made a mistake telling our kids if you don't get a 4-year degree, you're failure in life. There's a lot of technical union jobs, and I'm proud to have the best apprenticeship program in the United States to give people an avenue towards work. But for those who are going to college, we know the debt burden is so incredible. We got to do something about that. I'm proud the New York Times just the other day said we've got the best new financial aid package for free college for any student earning less than $50,000 a year. I'm proud of that achievement for our college students as well. So I've worked on a lot of things. There's a lot of victories I've had. But we have to understand that unless we solve the climate crisis, none of these other things over the long term can be successful. So this is the predicate for success of all we hold dear for our communities and our families. And I believe this does have to be the first priority, because if it's not job one, it won't get done. We have to use the political capital beyond all imagination on this political left, which means we have to have a president willing at the very first statement of their candidacy to say this is going to be job #1. I've said that day one. And I'm still the only candidate that has said that. Now, I'm also the candidate who I believe has brought to the table what we need. You know, talk is one thing. It's kind of cheap on occasion. Walking the talk is more important. I've walked the walk. I'm proud to tell you this year I passed the best 100% clean electricity law in the United States of America. So we will get off fossil fuels. So we will not have fossil fuels in our electrical system, our electrical grid system. And in that bill, there's one thing I'm very, very proud of, because I believe that at the same time we're defeating climate change, we can build a more just economy where everyone's got a shot at a middle-income job. And I believe this very strongly. And so in our 100% bill, we embedded environmental justice like nobody else ever has in an environmental bill. We made sure that if you're a low-income person, you'll get a subsidy for your utility bills while we're cleaning up the environment. We made sure that we are going to rebuild an entire new collective bargaining system in the United States so that the people who brought us the weekend, the unions, can bring us pay raises we haven't had for 25 years. And this is a whole new system. By the way, our proposal, we rolled this out the other day, and this will create a whole new collective bargaining system. You know, half of America, Trump wants to brag about the economy, but 50% of Americans have not had a pay raise in 25 years. Think about that. And the reason that's so absurd is because they're creating more goods and services, but all that productivity increases is going right to the top. So I was proud to march with the SEIU and AFSCME and other unions to the headquarters of the McDonald's Corporation the other day, where the CEO makes 2,100 times more than the median income of people who work in McDonald's. So it's about time that we gave a shot again so people can have union jobs. And when we're building wind turbines and batteries and electric cars and biorefinery plants, those are good union jobs across the United States. And I'm committed to that, to make sure that that happens. So I'm proud that we've passed the best energy efficiency program in the United States. We know, and this is why this is such a great job creator for the new economy. You know, the new clean energy economy is not all solar panels, and not all physicists, and not all wind turbines. It's rebuilding virtually every building we got across America, because we know we're using prodigious amounts of energy that's just going up in smoke, because we have such low energy efficiency of the buildings. Now, who's going to rebuild these buildings? I know it's going to be carpenters, laborers, sheet metal, plumbers, IBEW members. This is the largest infrastructure project since the interstate highway system, and we're going to do it, starting right here in Iowa. I believe that. So our plan is to put 8 million people to work building batteries at work. Audio systems. Listen, I'm a politician. I've been around the bend. I can talk with the best of them. So I think you got a drift. There's really two parts of this plan. One is based on morality, and I believe this is a powerful moral issue we have before us. And I got to tell you, I'm so pleased to be joined at the hip with the most inspirational Americans, and that's the young folks associated with the Sunrise Movement. They are demanding that the Woodstock generation get off their duffs and do something about clean energy, and that is a righteous demand. And one of the most interesting people I've met on the campaign trails. I sat on the bench with a 14-year-old named Alexandria Villaseñor. Every Friday she sits on a bench in front of the United Nations in New York and holds her kids' climate strike message. This is a moral obligation to the young people of America. And I know how dire it is. I went to Dartmouth and was talking to the president of the Democratic Club. They were a young woman. She told me she talked to two of her friends in the few days before, and they had told her they didn't know whether it was the right thing to do to bring a child into a world that would be so degraded in this regard. It is time to act. And it's time to act all across the United States. And that's why America is ready for this message. You know, I talked to a woman I met named Regina, help me out, Regina Haddock. Regina Haddock in Davenport a couple weeks ago. Regina had built a nonprofit called Dress for Success, where they helped women who were down on their luck get clothing so you could go to the job interview and get a little counseling so you get back on your feet. She was helping 1,500 women in Davenport get back off their feet, up on their feet, until the flood. And the flood came over the barricade and wiped it out. She lost everything. Nonprofits typically don't have insurance. She lost everything in her nonprofit. She lost her lease because it's going to cost too much to repair the old building she was in. And her dreams were drowned. And when I was talking to her, watching her tears, it just made me so angry to know that we have a president who is ignoring the tears of Regina Haddock, whose dreams were wiped out in the floods, and Marcia Moss, a woman I met whose home was melted down to a pile of aluminum in Seminole Springs in the fires north of Los Angeles, and Alexandria Villaseñor, this young woman I met who had to move out of California because her asthma was so bad. It is time for America to have a leader who believes in compassion to respond to this moral obligation. At the same time, he or she has an understanding of the science and is a can-do president who understands the incredible capabilities of America to create whole new industries. And with your help, I intend to be that president of the United States of America. That is what I believe. Now, to do that, by the way, this is an incredible turnout here. I really appreciate people coming out. But we got to make a selection in the Democratic Party who's really got the best vision and the most experience and the best plan to do that. And I really think we need all the candidates to have an opportunity to do that. And this is not a simple thing. Look, when they ask us, right now the situation, they're going to ask all the candidates, what are you going to do about to save the planet and totally restructure and mobilize the entire United States? You have 60 seconds. Not really possible. So I've called upon the Democratic National Committee to do the right thing. Have a debate dedicated to climate change so that we can really understand what is necessary, and we get all these candidates up here, and they'll all get a chance to put their plans out there, and people can take a look. And we deserve this. And by the way, the committee has done something that is maddening to me. Not only have they refused so far to have a debate, but they've threatened to blacklist anybody that has a debate in some other forum. What kind of democracy is that? So I'm going to be active pushing this issue. We're not done with this. We're not going to lay down and play dead. And there's already been 9 state members, chairs of the 9 state committees who've said they're going to bring a resolution at the next executive committee so we can have a Democratic Party that believes in democracy and have a debate on climate change. And I hope they're going to succeed. I'm going to back them all the way on this. So I hope you might chime in on your thoughts as well. And look, I believe every candidate believes they're the best thing since sliced bread. But I will tell you that I do believe I have a unique position in this, both because of my personal passion, the fact that I've been working on this for a couple decades. I'm the only candidate certainly who's written a book about it. I helped form the U.S. Climate Alliance with Jerry Brown. We now have 24 states that are dedicated to the Paris Agreement. And the reason that we founded the U.S. Climate Alliance is we wanted the rest of the world to know there's intelligent life in America. And that's an important statement. We got a president who says these wind turbines I saw driving over here today cause cancer. We know they cause jobs. That's what we understand. And so it was important to get that leadership effort going. And the work I've done in Washington, where we will be the first state in the United States to be free of any coal-based electricity in 2025, coming from a coal plant in our state. And we need to get off coal, by the way. We just need to get off coal. Now, this is just not me talking, it's 10,000 scientists. And you can't negotiate this. You can negotiate with Republicans sometimes. Once in a while, you can negotiate with your spouse. But you cannot negotiate with the laws of physics or the laws of thermodynamics. And I'm the candidate that says we got to get off coal in the next 10 years. And I expect every candidate to join me on that so that we can make pledge to Americans that we're going to get this job done. And I believe this wholeheartedly. So I do believe I've got a unique position. I look forward to whatever discussion we've got to be able to compare and contrast that. And I'll just close you with a couple comments. I represent a state that understands that progressive values help your economy, they don't hurt your economy. The Republicans would have you believe if you grow a middle class, it will hurt your economy. That if you believe in the power of immigration to be a positive thing in America, rather than a negative thing, you'll have a bad economy. Well, I'll tell you what we got in Washington. We got a governor who was the very first governor to stand up against Donald Trump's Muslim ban. We got a governor who's been We got a person, I was the first governor who says we are welcoming Syrian refugees. We had to do our part when we're going to have so many climate refugees in the future. I'm a governor who was one of the first to make sure our dreamers, who are some of the most inspiring people in my state, get a college education when they need it. And I made sure that we're going to have that. And now we need a comprehensive immigration reform bill that's going to finally bring this country together. And I look forward to when we respond to understanding that that light in the Statue of Liberty is still shining all across America. And I'm dedicated to that. And when you have a value system like this, you get the best economy in the United States. You know why? Because you can recruit talent from everywhere to build a high-tech economy. And I want to be able to do that for everyone in America. I want every woman in America to be protected with reproductive parity, like I've put in place in my state. I want every kid to have the financial aid that we've got. I want every kid to have a chance to be free of asthma from climate change. I want every woman to be able to have gender pay equity like we have. I want everybody to understand the healthcare success that we've had. I want people in America to have what Washington State has had, and I want to thank you for a chance to talk about this to get another President of the United States. So thank you very much. Let's get to some questions. So, questions. Thank you. Thank you. Questions, all right. Let's take some questions. Go ahead, gentleman right back there. Question. Well, first, I would remove a person that's anywhere within 1,000 yards of any foreign policy who is so chaotic and spasmodic and interested in bumper stickers rather than solutions, who is a guy who can't run a 2-car funeral. That's the first thing I would do, just to give you an honest answer. But on Iran, North Korea, China, they all have something in common, which is that we know that if you're going to put pressure on China, if you're going to do the right thing with Iran to try to make sure they do not become a nuclear power, you are going to be more effective working with allies rather than as a lone ranger. And unfortunately, and I got nothing against the Lone Ranger. I love the Lone Ranger in that regard. Unfortunately, this is a president who has burned up every relationship we've had across the world, and as a result, instead of having an international alliance, can work to effectively put pressure on China to do what we like to have done. He has weakened our ability to do that by being a go-it-alone person who really is driven by press conferences rather than any strategic thought. On Korea, I can tell you that I've talked to folks in the intelligence community who will say this president literally does not even listen to the intelligence reports associated with North Korea. And his whole policy is driven by an interest to get the next press conference or the next tweet rather than rational decision making. So my thoughts will be based, number one, on the power of alliances to make us strong and effective. Number two, listening to the intelligence community. And number three, as a person who is one of the strongest, most vocal and persistent opponents of the Iraq War, a person who says we need to be a little more cautious before we put people in harm's way under the belief that we can entirely restore and change cultures that we don't understand across the world. And those three principles, I will believe, will make us stronger and safer across the world. That's what I believe. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Weisham from Iowa City. I'd like to get your thoughts on putting a price on carbon in some form. I know that you proposed that in Washington State, but I believe it's not in your current plan. I work in building design, and I can tell you that probably the biggest factor that would promote zero energy buildings would be if energy costs were high enough to justify the additional investment to put in zero energy systems. It is possible. I work in the industry. I know that it's we have the technology. This is not something that is out there. So I'm just curious on your thoughts on putting a price on carbon and why it's not in your current plan.
Yeah, the question is about putting a price on carbon. I have supported numerous proposals to put a price on carbon. I was a big supporter of the cap and trade system in Congress 2009. I was a proponent of either a cap and trade or a straight carbon tax. Yeah. Yeah, the question was about what do I think about a price on carbon, putting a direct carbon tax or a cap and trade system on carbon. Thanks, Rob. So I've been a supporter of a variety of measures of putting a direct price on carbon. We had a carbon tax. We have had two measures on the Washington state ballot in the last 3 years. One was a revenue neutral carbon tax, and one was a carbon tax that would have created a fund to do X, Y, and Z. Both of them failed by very, very wide margins. And I am not proposing one specifically in my plan at this moment for a couple reasons. One, I believe we can get essentially the productivity that you get from a carbon price and more through direct regulatory actions and investment. So you've properly pointed out a price could drive some of these investments that you'd like to say in our buildings. Another way to do it is to make it legally necessary and binding and a concrete requirement. And that is what I'm proposing, that we adopt building codes that starting 10 years from now, we essentially are making about net zero buildings, starting with the first retrofit requirement for commercial buildings. So I just passed the first law to require retrofitting of existing commercial buildings. And that can get you the same or better and more immediate and more certain carbon results. Now there is also the issue of the ability to pass a carbon price, because what I have learned in Washington is people kind of have some reluctance to vote for something that looks and smells like a tax, right, in the first order. They are much more supportive of efforts that require industries to actually build energy efficiency buildings, stop using coal, stop selling cars that burn gasoline and diesel in the next 10 years. Norway's doing it in the next 5 or 6 years. These are binding activities. So I have suggested we go down that path. Now at a later date, there might be a carbon price system that certainly I would consider. But thanks for your question. It's a really, really important one. Yeah?
Jason Snell with the Sunrise Movement here.
Thanks for your leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate just first of all, thank you to everyone who's wearing our Green New Deal shirts. We printed those yesterday and today, so it's exciting to see those. I appreciate your successes in Washington, and one of the things with Iowa is it's a purple state, and what's an effective way to reaching out to people who are more conservative and maybe reluctant to even look at the science of climate change? I'm curious about your successes.
Yeah, the question about how to reach folks maybe in purple or red areas who may not be as concerned as this group in the immediate offing. A couple things. One thing we do need to understand is the politics of this are changing quite rapidly in the correct direction. And the reason is because what used to be a line on a chart, when I wrote my book 12 years ago, I'd go around saying, look, when we have 414 parts per million, there's going to be floods in the Midwest and fires in California. And people said, well, call me back when that happens. Well, guess what? People are now seeing, yeah, the phone's ringing, that's right. People are now seeing it with their own eyes. And so this is changing very rapidly. And one of the things I've learned in politics is you can have this slow movement and boom, get to a tipping point. I think we're at a tipping point. Marriage equality, look how fast that changed. Marijuana legalization issues, look how fast that's changing in the United States. So I think the good news is we're at or approaching a tipping point. But as far as how we talk to people about this, I know we can because I've succeeded. I was chair of the Democratic Governors Association this year. And we elected 7 new Democratic governors, 5 of them in the Midwest, Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, and Illinois, and Kansas. And they went around talking about the job-creating potential. Now, we had a narrow miss here in Iowa, and I love Fred, and we did everything we could for him, and thanks for everybody who helped him. And we'll be back in Iowa. But so two things are happening. We have two waves that are cresting at the same moment. The urgency wave is cresting because of the fires and floods. And the promise wave is cresting because jobs are growing like crazy. Jobs in clean energy are growing twice as fast as the rest of the U.S. economy. I met a guy named Dave, young man, he was at Des Moines Area Community College last week. He's in the wind turbine program. And I asked him why he's going into this program, and he just kind of said, duh, you don't have to be a rocket science, this is the growth where the jobs are going to be. And so talking to people about jobs, talking about reality, we're going to win this argument. Thanks for your leadership. Yeah.
Where do you stand?
Billy Wilson, I'm out of polls, but where do you stand? 2012 or 2007, we passed the renewable fuel standard, which helped make some efforts to try to move fossil fuels out of our markets. That's been gutted by the current president. Where do you stand on that issue, and where do you think we can improve that?
Well, we need to go. We need to go way beyond renewable portfolio standards. They're very effective, but they're not enough. We got to go to 100% clean. This is just a scientific reality. We cannot have by mid-century any significant usage of fossil fuels that doesn't have some carbon sequestration component involved in it. And so this is just a physical reality. And again, this is not an arguable point, it's just a physical reality. So we passed a renewable portfolio standard by initiative, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. We created a $6 billion wind turbine industry in our state. We now have over 30% of electricity from Iowa from wind. So I encourage everyone to be as aggressive as possible in RPSs. But the RPS that we have to shoot for is 100%. And that's just a physical reality. And that means we have to get off things within the next 10 years to make sure by mid-century we're totally off it. And that's what I'm committed to doing. And I'm the only candidate right now who's put a plan forward to do that. And by the way, I believe we're capable of doing this, and I'll tell you why. June 6th, D-Day, you know, a couple days ago, I knew a guy, by the way, who is a congressman from Florida. He claims he was the first GI to have a beer in Europe because he put a Pabst Blue Ribbon in his pack when he parachuted on the evening of June 5th. So that memory is with me. In June, or in December 1941, we made exactly 70 Jeeps in the United States. 70. By 1945, our economy had produced 640,000 Jeeps. Don't tell me that we can't make electric cars by the hundreds of thousands. Don't tell me that we can't make electric ferries. We're going to be building the first electric ferry in the Western Hemisphere. We just passed a law to do that. We are fully capable of this type of industrial mobilization, and when we do this, we're going to create jobs by the millions. Yeah?
Here in Iowa, we have a lot of problems in agriculture related to climate and the environment, and we're also victims of the climate issue. But on the other hand, the Democratic Party here in Iowa, Trump won these red regions, they're very rural, and in Iowa, between 2016 and 2018, we had two candidates for Congress that only won one county, an urban county. And related to that is just understanding the Farm Bill. You know, environmentalists, for one example, and many others, see the Farm Bill, you know, they see subsidies, and they think, oh, farmers are over-rewarded, and therefore that must be why there's a problem. Except if you look at the full data, such as this, which shows corn subsidies in the black, that farmers have got paid less and less and less and less, even with subsidies, even with increases in subsidies. And so, if you come in here and say, you know, we want to take more away from farmers, and because that's what caused the problem, in fact, it's the penalization of farmers through turning from a democratic farm bill like we had in the New Deal, and the Harkin-Kemp, to what we have today, which is terrible.
I think everybody heard the question. You just pointed out I made a huge mistake in my campaign. You know, you should never admit mistakes, but I'm going to right now. I made a big mistake. I forgot to wear my my United States House of Representatives Agriculture Committee hat. Because I'm the only candidate who served on the Agricultural Committee in the House. And the reason I did that is I came from an agricultural community. We raised our kids there, and I served on the Ag Committee. So I'm quite knowledgeable about these ag issues. And they're close to my heart. You know, when I was at Hamburg looking at the flood damage, and I saw the silos, they're all busted, you know, grain laying out into the water. And I realized Donald Trump is getting the ag community two ways. Number one, he's fouled up our trade situation, so we've lost all these markets around the world. So farmers have had to store all their grains because they don't have a market. And then he isn't doing about climate change, so the flood comes and washes away your silo. The ag community is getting killed by this guy. So I'm eager to start working on these issues. Now, I'll just mention a couple things in the ag community. First off, I believe the agricultural community can be a net winner big time by developing a plan to defeat climate change. First, by stopping climate change so your fields aren't washed away every 2 or 3 years by these incredible floods. That is a huge, enormous benefit for the ag community. But second, I believe there is a great opportunity where farmers potentially can have a stream of revenue by sequestering carbon in their topsoil. We want to get carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and into the topsoil. And there is a way to create a revenue stream for farmers to produce sequestration benefits. Same thing for timber lot owners, so we can have trees suck carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and put it into wood fiber. So I believe the ag industry can be a huge winner in this effort, and they have to be. By the way, it's not just floods. There's only about 67% of the fields have been planted, and it should be about 95% right now in the Midwest, just because it's so wet. I want to be a president to save farms, and I hope you'll help me out. Okay, yes.
My name is Enslee. I'm a nurse. We're trying to get everybody on board with this very important subject.
The question was, Mary's a nurse. The question was about how to pay for health care. Well, first off, have good nurses and make sure that they are adequately compensated and protected. That's why I'm proud to have passed one of the bills I just signed 2 weeks ago for mandatory rest breaks for nurses, so you don't have to go crazy with your difficult job. And I'm proud, one of the ways you take care of people's wages is to raise them, and I'm happy to tell you that the nurses who work for the state of Washington got a really significant raise this year because I made sure they did. That's one of the things you do. And I'm serious about this. So healthcare, I'm going to, big question, quickly run through it. Number one, I'm the only candidate in this race who both voted for Obamacare and implemented it. You know, voting for things is one thing, implementing is another thing. We've had one of the best implementations of Obamacare. We have 800,000 people now insured. We've been able to reduce medical inflation as much or more than any other state in the United States by adopting behavioral health to help people have healthier lives so they don't get sick so much, by integrating physical and mental health. There's no reason to have two different systems. Your emotional state is connected to your physical state, so we are integrating those things. We passed the first public option in the history of America where people can get a state-sanctioned health care plan. We passed the first long-term elder care bill, and this is really important. We know we have a huge tsunami of retirees. We know the dementia crisis is going to be on us. So we have passed the first long-term elder care program in my state, and I believe it's a template for the United States. Then on a national level, we have to have universal health care, and that starts by making sure anybody who wants Medicare can get Medicare. If you want Medicare, you can get Medicare. Medicare for all that want it. We should reduce the access age to get automatic Medicare, and I think we should start by enrolling people in Medicare the day you're born, so you can start moving towards a more universal care system. The other thing I will mention, and this is really important, we got to have nurses and physicians and PAs and therapists. We just don't have enough. So yesterday I was in Spokane, Washington, where we just celebrated a big expansion of our medical school in Spokane. And this year I passed a bill that will institute the very first medical school exclusively dedicated to mental health. And we got to build those things all over the United States. Yeah, we got a last question. Rob's going to be the hook here.
Related question, a little background question. So I think Kurt from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, but I also have family who live in Washington, and a close friend of mine went to stay with that family in Washington so he could have access to Washington's better mental health care than what we have here in Iowa. We just don't have enough facilities to take care of Iowa's needs. So, thanks for having me covered there. My question is, how do you think mental health care should be expanding throughout the United States, throughout states that don't have it, but here in Washington?
Well, the question was about how to expand mental health care. Well, let me just tell you this. We're not perfect. I appreciate you saying that. I'm glad your friend had a good experience in Washington. But we're not perfect in Washington. We have to build up our capacity dramatically. That's one of the things we talked about. We got to get more psychiatrists and psychologists and nursing staff. So we're building capacity in Washington State. I don't want you to think that it's the Garden of Eden quite yet in the state of Washington. One is capacity. Two is where you provide the service. We know we have increasing depression and anxiety in our young people in schools. This is a major problem in every community, and I believe that we need to provide more mental health in the schools, and that's why I've tried to get more counselors and nurses and mental health professionals in the schools to help our young people. It means that we have a more distributed system, so instead of having just big mental hospitals in 2 or 3 places, we distribute community therapy places around the neighborhoods, so you don't have to travel 150 miles to get your treatment. We know that this is related to the opioid crisis, which is in every community in the United States. And we've been very active in attacking our opioid crisis by having one of the best programs to use a MAT, medically assisted treatment, because we know there's new medications that can really help people, and we're using them big time. We've also led a movement to prevent people from getting addicted in the first place by limiting the amount of opioids that can be prescribed so people don't get addicted in the first place from legal usage. So those are just a few of the things we're acting on, and I hope your friend comes back and gets involved in the caucus process, and you might mention my name when you do that. Listen, I want to thank you. Before we break up, I want to make a request. I just want to thank you. This has been such an inspiration to be in Iowa. People in Iowa take this responsibility so seriously. There are so many people engaged in this process. I want to thank you for really kicking the tires of these candidates and giving an open mind to everyone. There's a lot of talent in this field. I've identified 18 potential vice presidents already, so that's good news. I hope you'll consider my candidacy. I hope that if you share my view about this debate, you'll share your view with the Democratic National Committee. And I hope that if you want to make sure that climate change is on the debate stage, you might want to think to go to Enslee.com and put in $1 or even more, because I've got to get 130,000 individual donors to make sure I'm on the debate for the 3rd and 4th debates. Climate change will be on the debate stage, I hope as much as possible, the first 2, but I need 130,000 to qualify for the 3rd and 4th. So if anybody with a buck in their pocket, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, go to Enslee.com. Let's go get another president. Thanks Rob again for organizing.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, Washington State Governor Jay Enslee. He will have some time to visit one-on-one with people. If you didn't get your questions asked, do your best to get a chance to say hi to him or talk to one of the other elected officials. And thank you so much for being here tonight.